Yes.
How are we supposed to have a relationship with God or Jesus or whatever if he's like not here?
Good. Jesus is here, but he's in the form of the Holy Spirit, who is a spiritual being.
Like a ghost? Because I don't believe in ghosts.
Right. I don't believe in ghosts either, in the sense of Casper. But I think it's real clear that there are spiritual beings that exist. If you have a hard time believing that, I would encourage you to read M. Scott Peck, the great psychiatrist's book called People of the Lie. And in this book, People of the Lie, M. Scott Peck argues that American psychiatry should have a branch called evil. And what his point is when you look at something like the My Lai massacre, when you watch American soldiers slaughter some Asian people during the My Lai massacre, you're dealing with something more than just human evil. You're dealing with some type of spiritual force. And so that's why M. Scott Peck, the great psychiatrist, makes the point American psychiatry should have a branch of evil. Now, have I ever seen your brain?
No.
No. Have I ever smelled your brain?
No.
Have I ever touched your brain?
No.
Why would I believe that you have a brain?
Because all people have a brain?
Well, yeah, that might be part of it, but the real reason that I believe you have a brain is because your articulate speech, the way you dress yourself in an orderly fashion.
So if people who aren't able to do that, are you saying that they don't have a brain?
No. You could be brain
because
impaired.
if that's how you define me having a brain, then how would someone who isn't able to do that have a brain?
Right. My point is, I can't see God. And people snicker and say, well, then you're an idiot for believing in God. Ma'am, I can't see your brain, but the evidence of your articulate speech, the evidence of the way you dress yourself in an orderly fashion, convinces me that between your two beautiful ears lies a brain. Similarly, I cannot see God. I cannot touch God. I cannot hear God audibly. But the order and the design of the universe, the order and design of the human body, convinces me that there is some type of God who creates order out of chaos, who creates reason when there is no reason. Yes, ma'am.
So why would a good God, if you're saying God is so good, why would he allow, all this bad stuff to go on? There's so much bad stuff, like rape, kids with cancer, people dying. Why would a good God allow all of this to go on? How do you explain that?
You bet. Ultimately, I do not know why God allowed evil and suffering. But I do know that God created you and me with a free will. He created us to love him. And love, in order to be real, must be free. If it's not free, it's not love. In other words, I'm convinced a computer and a robot cannot love. But you can, I can, because we're human beings created with a free will. If you have to love, that's not love. Love is a free decision of the human will and mind to care about somebody else's well-being. And I don't have to care about your well-being. I don't have to lift a finger to help you, regardless of how badly you're suffering. Or I can choose to help you and to care for you.
So couldn't God choose to help us?
And that's exactly what Jesus Christ revealed. God has chosen to help us in a myriad of different ways, but most clearly, God has chosen to help us by becoming man in Jesus Christ, who comes on a rescue mission to save us. I need saving. Why? Because I have a date with death. Jesus Christ comes to bring eternal life. Stuart, what would you say to that?
Well, piece two, why does God allow suffering, just in general? A big part of it is when I look at the question of suffering and evil, I have to say, why does it bug me so much? Because a lot of atheists that I encounter will say, well, because we've just evolved higher than animals, because animals really don't get caught up in this question of suffering. And then you get into the question of consciousness. Okay, we think about our thinking. We think about abstract ideas, meaning and purpose in this life. So why does suffering really get to us so much? Because we're created in the image of God. We were created in order for us to be able to have perfect relationships, in order for us to flourish in such a way where there's not decay and breakdown in the environment, cosmically, socially, psychologically. Think about all the depression and anxiety, bipolar on this campus. It was not meant to be. So it makes way more sense from a Christian perspective to say, okay, there's breakdown based off of our own free will, and we did turn to go in an opposite direction from how God created this place and for us to actually tick and work. And when that happens, things go amok. But we say that's not good. And so to understand that there's truly meaning and purpose in this life, you have to have a good God, and you have to have a life that goes on forever, immortality, in a way where things will be actually put right again. We all long for that, and it makes sense if there is a God. If there is no God, then it's ridiculous for us to even really be struggling with this so much.
So you're saying there was once a world where there was no evil? It was perfect?
Right.
When was
Exactly.
that? When was that?
That would be Adam and Eve. So
But there was evil in Adam and Eve.
there was evil in Adam and Eve eventually, right? Exactly. When you had the tree, Adam and Eve decided, okay, we're not going to trust. It's not that they didn't believe in God when they grabbed that apple. It's that they didn't believe that God had their best in mind, then they grabbed that apple.
Wait, why did they grab it? Why did they take it?
Because they started to think, God does not want me to be happy. He actually wants me to be a type of perhaps puppet on a string. It's not like they all of a sudden stopped believing in God and said, God, you don't exist anyway, so we're just going to do this. No, and that strikes directly in my own heart, probably y'all's as well, because we struggle with, God, why do you tell me I actually have to submit to your will? Don't I lose my identity in trying to somehow conform to your will? That's the crux of the issue.
That's the devil putting those ideas in your head.
But who's to say our God is the right God? Because I personally don't identify with the religion, but I do believe in a higher being and a higher power. But I don't personally believe in like the whole Jesus Christ thing or all those stories, because that easily could have been made up. And that's just my personal opinion. You can prove me wrong. You can prove it right. I just believe that there is a higher being at the end of all of this. But really, who's to say, like, how to live if you're just a good person? Like, why not just be a good person? Why follow the rules?
Yeah. Great question. I loved how you framed it, too. One piece where you and I could potentially agree on is this: I'm not going to prove it to you. You couldn't prove your position to me, because it's an existential, philosophical question. There's evidence behind it, and we want to land on where is the best evidence. Then we take a step of trust. Just like in marriage to a man or a woman, it's you weigh the evidence as to, is this person reliable? Do I love them? Why do I love them? And then you have to take a step of trust and faith. And for many people that I counsel, later on, they really regret it, because the evidence actually was lacking, where they thought it was truly there and this person was credible. So you have to look at the existence of God, and more specifically, to your good question, the existence of Christ, and was he truly who he claimed to be? Or if not, then totally discard him. It's like Bono said of U2. He said, you either are going to say, God, I worship you, Jesus Christ, I worship you, or you're going to nail him to a cross. But there's never kind of this vanilla, neutral approach to Jesus with his claims that he made to be God. It's either, no, he needs to die, he was a manic, crazy, lunatic, or he's calling me to worship him, and he actually did create the universe, so it would make a lot of sense to worship him. Now, you talked about this kind of power. We hear that oftentimes. There's a power out there, higher than me. There's a force. Okay, you're definitely partly there. We're closer than, say, an atheist and I, or an atheist and you. But I believe in God because I believe you need to have a personal being who relates personally with you. You can't get the personal from the impersonal. It makes sense that there's a personal, perhaps, force, you would say, out there, but I would say being. There'd have to be a being who loves you, who created you in his image, who gives you value, rather than you standing out here trying to say, you know, I've worked X, Y, and Z, I have attained X, Y, and Z, so now I have worth. Then, once you get there, we'd have to split these questions up because they're very long questions are great questions. Jesus Christ, 98% of secular Christian scholars believe that Jesus Christ existed as a person. So there's almost a consensus on that. But then you have to work into, are the Gospels reliable? The claims that he made about himself, are those true? And you get those 7 in the Gospel of John alone, and then Mark, Matthew, he's claiming to forgive sins. He takes worship. Is his character reliable? Because if he's God, you want him to have a pretty good character. You would expect that from God. And then is there evidence behind the resurrection? So reliability of the Gospels, are his claims real? Are his character good? And is there evidence behind the resurrection? And the real linchpin is evidence behind the resurrection. Was that historically reliable event, or is it just a joke? Are we out here just spitting fumes in such a way where there's no way somebody actually rose from the dead? We know that doesn't work. There's no evidence behind the resurrection. So it's just all a farce.
Good. So, what do you think? Do you think Jesus rose from the dead or not?
No.
Okay, good. Why?
That's not how it happens. Like, you just don't, like, rise up. It hasn't happened again. It never really happened in previous religions or many other religions. There's never been this resurrection. There's been reincarnation, which I do believe in, because there's so many gods, yet they all believe the same thing. So in that sense, I believe in reincarnation of that one principle in many different regions, because you have one in Asia, you have one, there's something for every area, yet they all have the same powers and same abilities, yet ours is the right one, and ours is the most crucial, or ours is the most critical of our living. So in a way, I feel like as an American society, we have chosen to use religion as a rule book to how we need to act as a society versus other religions that use it as a practice to just be a good person, to have good karma.
Okay, now I like your first point. The reason I can't believe the resurrection, you said, is because it's never happened again. Okay, but we've hit a wall on this one. Has the beginning of the universe ever happened again? No. Has the beginning of human life ever happened again?
Could.
No. No, it began. Has the discovery of penicillin ever happened again? No, it happened historically. Has George Washington ever been president of the United States? Again. No. My mother was a good golfer. She hit a hole-in-one. Did it happen repetitively that my mother hit a hole-in-one? No. You see, sir, the whole idea of repeatability is wonderful when it comes to science. But when it comes to history, sir, you cannot repeat history. I was born 67 years ago. Did that ever happen again, my birth? No, sir. It happened once. It's an historical event, but it never happened again. Therefore, the whole idea, I can't believe that Jesus rose from the dead because it hasn't happened again, is not fair when it comes to historical knowledge. You're right, it hasn't happened again. Neither has the beginning of the universe, neither has George Washington being the first president of the United States, neither has my birth or your birth ever happened again. It's not repeatable. So, the question then is there a supernatural God who can perform a miracle, change the laws of nature, and bring a dead person back to life? And obviously, of course, the answer is yes, it's possible. So then the question becomes, is it reasonable to believe that? In light of the fact that you and I do not see dead people rising from the dead, is it reasonable for you and me to believe that indeed Jesus did rise from the dead? And I would argue, because of the existence of a supernatural God who created life in the first place out of nothing, remember, something never comes from nothing. It takes a supernatural God to create. Well, he created the universe out of nothing. So of course, if he created the universe, he's more than capable of raising a dead person back to life. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but so where would you say we lie now?
Where do we lie now?
In this current day and age, like where is God when we need him?
Good.
Or where is that supernatural being that we need?
You bet. According to Christ and my experience, God loves you, and by his Holy Spirit, he's drawing you to himself. Now, you and I can throw up all types of excuses. There have been a few atheists out here who have said, no, Cliff, there's no God, I'm an atheist. But then you see when I ask them, what are you living for? And what's the evidence that what you are living for is true? In other words, every atheist has faith. Every agnostic has faith. Every Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jew, Muslim, we all have faith. Meaning by that, we all answer the basic human questions. Why is human life valuable? What's the purpose of life? What's the basis of your ethical system? Do you think there's life after death or not? And the answers that we give involve hopefully evidence, but then there's tremendous faith, a tremendous trust that what we believe is true. So we all have faith. The question is, what's the evidence that whatever you believe is true? Now, sir, I appreciate you shared with me you believe in reincarnation. What's the evidence that reincarnation is true? Why? In other words, why do you believe in reincarnation?
I personally believe it because, so I see it as there's one high being who we see as God.
Right.
It could be named whoever, it could be a female, it could be whatever it is. It could be just a spirit.
Right.
But they send down prophets to preach the word of God.
Okay.
But I feel like in our nation, we have used that as a way to control people. Rather than to control our lifestyles or to control how we treat other human beings. Because if you look at prophets like Buddha or prophets like in Hinduism or Judaism, they all have the same principles. Or they all have similar principles, of course. But when you look at Jesus, the principles are just so exact and so, not derogatory, what's the word? They're just so demeaning. Versus the other ones where it's like, just be a good person. Ours is, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Similar to Mormonism. We are given a list of rules versus a way to be a good person.
Okay. So the first commandment in the Bible is, I'm the Lord your God, you'll have no other gods before me. Okay, why is that important? Okay, watch. Hi, my name's Cliff. What's your name?
Morgan, nice to meet you.
Ann, good to meet you.
Ann.
What's your name?
Morgan.
Sally.
No.
No? What's your name?
Morgan.
Well, I'm going to call you Marie. Now, what am I doing? Not only am I being rude, but I am being incredibly arrogant. Her name is not Sally. Her name is not Ann. Her name is not Marie. Her name is Morgan. Now, I'm going to have the humility to allow this woman to reveal to me what her name is. If she remains quiet or if she lies to me, I'm never going to have the privilege of getting to know Morgan. She is Morgan. She is not Sally. She's not Marie. She's not Ann. Same thing with God. You know, I think God is a white male, about 6 foot 1 inch tall, and he likes basketball. Oh, Cliff, wow, that's interesting. It happens that you're 6 foot 1, white male, and you enjoy basketball. So you've basically created God in your own image. Don't do that, Cliff. It's rude to Morgan to not accept her revelation of herself, and it's rude to God to not accept his revelation of who he is. See, that's why, sir, you and I have to be serious about what's the evidence that Muhammad spoke the truth, that Ba'ula of the Baha'i faith spoke the truth, that Siddhartha Gautama Buddha spoke the truth. What's the evidence that Jesus Christ spoke the truth? Because obviously, although there are similarities, as you pointed out, sir, very well, there are also contradictions.
Yes.
For instance,
but I feel like the contradictions just come culturally. Because they all were spread out so far that the contradictions were just based on their culture. But I also don't understand how a religion that came from Israel or a religion that came from the Middle East seems to benefit, I hate to say it, the white male.
Oh, wow. I think it's fair to say Christianity has been used in the West to benefit white supremacy. But, sir, did you know that the demographic in the world today that has the highest percentage of Christians is women of color?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there are more women of color who believe in Jesus Christ than there are white folks.
But that's just to combat the white folks that do it. A lot of women of color who feel the need to learn and practice Christianity do it as a way to rebuttal the white man's approach.
I really don't feel like I turn towards religion to combat against white people. I'm just going to say it right here.
I definitely do.
Okay, but wait a second, sir. You stepped into a big mistake.
How so?
Because you just made an incredible judgment of women of color.
Yeah.
And you said that women of color believe in Jesus Christ. because they need a way to combat white folks. That is a lie, sir. And I know it's taught on this campus, so I understand why you would believe it. It's taught by some very intellectual professors of yours, okay? So I can empathize with you. But if you study African believers, if you study South American believers, if you study Asian believers, you begin to realize this has nothing to do with white folks. This has nothing to do with colonialism. This has to do with people who reject Western materialism, who reject American nationalism, and they're not impressed with American nationalism. But they are very profoundly affected by Jesus Christ because they realize that American materialism is the pits. It denies spirituality. It's just live for money, live for things, live for money. And my African brothers and sisters and my South American brothers and sisters and my Asian brothers and sisters reject that, but they say, Jesus Christ, the evidence is he is reliable. The evidence is there's more to life than materialism. I'm going to follow Christ. Does that make any sense?
A bit.
What doesn't make sense?
I see what you're saying. The only part that doesn't make sense to me personally is how we, as an American society, have corrupted religion just based on materialism.
You're right.
We really have, and
yes,
we've
sir.
made it a profitable source, which I don't think religion should have anything to do with money.
I hate that. You're
I hate
absolutely
it.
right.
And I feel like we, as an American society, have really coined religion as a profitable income.
Correct. At times, that's too correct.
Yeah.
Tragic, isn't it?
And I feel like that ruins the views for a majority of lower income people when it comes to, but they always have faith. Don't get me wrong, they always have faith.
In who?
Jesus Christ.
Correct.
But
my lower income friends in the United States have the intellectual open-mindedness to never allow a wealthy white Christian to turn them off to the true Jesus Christ, who did not have a materialist bone in his body, who attacked materialism and attacked the abuse of money in so many of his teachings. It's incredible. The parable of the rich fool in Luke 12, the guy who builds bigger barns to store his crop and says, soul, you have much good stored up for yourselves. What are you going to do? Oh, eat, drink, and be merry. And God says, you fool, today your soul is required of you. Now who's going to enjoy all the money that you've poured out to yourself? So repeatedly, Christ agrees with you. Materialistic Christianity is horrible, absolutely horrible. Nationalistic Christianity that says America is the greatest, horrible. White Christianity that asserts white supremacy or that the white folks are God's chosen best people, absolutely horrible. It stinks. You're absolutely right. So that's why, sir, please read the Gospels and examine the evidence that points to Jesus Christ being the truth, not white Western Christianity. Does that make sense?
yeah, I respect you for that.
Thank you. Stuart, what do you think?
Well, so we're not debating religion out here. It's Jesus Christ. Because I fully agree with you. It's like Niebuhr said when he talked about how if you have a petri dish and you have religion in there, everything about man and woman's pride and ego is going to be put into religion in such a way where it's not creating a just society. There's not humility. There's not an identity that's formed in a non-oppressive kind of way. Instead, it's I'm better than you. I'm better than you in every kind of way. I live better than you. I worship better than you. I have a God that's better than yours. That's what you're going to have versus encountering Jesus Christ in the gospel, which is all based on a non-oppressive absolute, which talks about there is tolerance shown through Christ in terms of how to really love and yet also how to really disagree with other people. Because now today we either have you can't love because you disagree with people, or you can disagree with people, but you definitely, in some way, you're stomping all over them. But Jesus Christ combines the two and says, no, when I disagree with you, I'm not saying you're a horrible person. I'm not stepping all over your identity. No, I'm disagreeing with your ideas, and yet I'm loving you as a person. And by disagreeing with your ideas, I hope that is actually loving you more than as opposed to if I'm just a pluralist or if I'm supposedly more tolerant that we get in our PC culture today. I'm simply saying just, yeah, I agree, and that's how I'm loving you. No, my child that's struggling with alcoholism, I'm not just going to say, I agree, go to the next party, binge drink at the next party, binge drink. No, I'm going to say there are consequences. I'm disagreeing with you here because I love you. And that's what Jesus was doing over and over again. So it's encountering Christ through the Gospels rather than, I agree with you, religion, which is worse than non-religion in my book.
Right. Thank you, sir. You're a delight to talk to.
You as well. I
The way you
appreciate
think
it.
and articulate, I really respect and appreciate a lot.
Thank you.
Is there any other issue that is on your mind?
With religion?
Yes. And with Jesus Christ specifically, what do you think about Christ? Do you think he's a good teacher?
I want to say no, but I don't feel like it's his fault. I feel like it's common man's fault.
Good. So we've agreed on that, right?
Yeah.
He's been corrupted. But when you read the Gospels, do you find Christ very attractive or not? When you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first 4 books of the New Testament, do you find Christ attractive or do you find him ugly and manipulative and someone you would not want to trust?
At the time, I feel like I wouldn't want to trust. He'd have to earn that trust.
Okay, good.
But he's not here for me now to earn that trust.
Okay, but you can read about how he treated people, what he taught ethically, how he died, and how he rose from the dead. So based on that historical evidence, do you think he's trustworthy or not?
Historical evidence is just written words. I mean, I could write whatever I want. I could say whatever I wanted about you, and 2,000 years, people could say you were the Jesus Christ. So that's where I have difficulty believing the Jesus Christ. But I do believe in Christianity. I do believe in Hinduism. I do believe in, like I said, the higher being. It's just Jesus Christ has been so corrupted and so marketed that now it's just really hard to find or to seek refuge in Jesus Christ.
I understand and I agree with you, a lot of what you say. But sir, for the past 2 days, there's been a guy out here who has called me some pretty dirty names. He's dropped the F-bomb repeatedly. He's made some really vulgar sexual moves out here. And that's history. Now today, I have the honor and privilege of talking with a guy who's very serious, very respectful, you. Now, if all of us say that you are the vulgar guy and this other guy is the really nice guy, that is wrong historically. It's incorrect.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could get a bunch of people to agree that you've been vulgar, that you've been disrespectful, because that's a lie. You've not been vulgar, you've been very respectful, and it's been an honor to dialogue with you. The other guy, he's a piece of work. He's a rascal.
Yeah.
All right? So that's historically true. We can't change that, guys. Now, we can lie. I can say, hey, guy, this guy's an idiot. He's just ripping me to shreds for no reason. That would be a lie. You've not done that once. You've been very kind, very gracious. And so I'd be lying. I would be historically inaccurate.